No, I'm just saying that the American political discourse is a mess, and the assassination attempts, even if they're Joker attempts, are an indication of the fact that any sense of basic decency, protocol, anything is long gone from American politics. That
Yeah.
even though Lyndon Johnson and Richard Nixon might have hated each other, but they still communicated with one another with some sense of decorum. It wasn't like a burping contest with Joker assassins.
I think that yeah, I'm not sure what that says about who we are, but it's clearly not good. I mean, obviously not good. But the
Does
question
that
becomes,
concern you? Okay, go
well,
ahead.
the
What is your
question
question?
comes where, what is, I think the bigger question, and that's what we wanted to have discussion about today, is where is the radicalization coming from? Where's this desire to kill? Like forget about presidents for a second and just think about, because the damage is done in high schools. The damage is done in, some kid reads about some other kid taking out, 10 kids in a high school, and then that's how they want to, that's what they want to do, because that's a cool story to them for some reason. I don't understand it at all. And so the question is, where's this motivation coming from? Where's all this radicalization coming from? And this is not like, this is not Islamic radicalization. This is just anger. And the question becomes, if the question for today is, if the richest person in the world, is seems to be just as guilty as some kid in their mom's basement, who's idolizing some other kid that blew up in elementary school, I mean, have we let certain aspects of social media go too far? And I think that's a question that a lot of people kind of freak out over, because as much as you want to think that you've got a good handle on things like raising kids and this person's, because everybody always says the same thing. Oh my God, this person was totally normal. Like I never saw it coming. Where'd they learn this? Where'd they get this from? And I think back to everything back to like Boston Marathon bombers, those two kids, and all these other crazy things that have happened over the last couple of decades. And you just kind of wonder, on the one hand, do you want to support free speech? On the other hand, do you want some guardrails? On the other hand, you want to get rid of the crazies. And is there any way to do it? Is there a method? Yeah. Are we missing something?
I mean, we're missing, I think, what is generally called the elephant in the room, which would be that the information market, under the guise of free speech, has morphed into social media platforms that utilize algorithms that monetize attention, and algorithms that monetize attention economically reward the most extreme and
Sure.
negative content possible. So in a normal distribution of information, extreme negative and extreme violent and extreme aggressive content, whether it's about immigrant dog eating or liberal, sex changes or, whatever's on the list that day, would never get the time of day in a normal, healthy information market. Because even if wacky sex changes in dog eating exists, the percentage of the universe of human beings that participate in wacky sex changes in dog eating is so small as to be statistically irrelevant. And yet stories of sex changes in dog eating are the things that the algorithm rewards the most liberally. I'm using those as examples. It could be a billion things. But, even when I say it to you on this podcast, you're like, my God, dog eating and sex changes. Like, we're primitively, whereas if I talk about, the prosperity of the healthy growth of the Chicago downtown economy, it doesn't generate the same the number of clicks or attention ultimately as dog eating and sex changes. And as long as you have an information market that, one, rewards and amplifies the most extreme and obscure and provocative content, and at the same time allows the same 1,000 or 500 or 10,000 human beings who are the most active around that content to find each other. So it also used to be that if there was one person somewhere in a basement that thought the crazy thing, it was impossible for them to find the other 500 people like them who were in some other basement in some other state to do that. And so there's all the wonderful benefits of technology, whether it's the building of a new financial network or the accessibility of global trading technology or lung transplants, heart transplants. I mean, there's so many fabulous stories about the advancements of technology and all the things that are possible. But the disgusting underbelly of the modern updated information economy world is a broken information market that misrepresents reality in a grossly distorted way, and in the process rewards and encourages the worst information and the most vulnerable among us in our population, whether it's wackadoodle people, crackpot assassins, as you call them, or isolated or lonely.
So the question is, okay, nobody's disagreeing. How do you solve it? I have some solution.
You have to regulate the information market.
Okay, assume it's virtually impossible to regulate information, especially in a country that prides itself on, you'll have a more difficult time. You can't regulate guns in this country. How are you going to regulate free speech? So that's not going to happen. So how do you do it? I have some ideas.
But again, sorry, go ahead. What's that?
I'm saying you can't regulate guns. You're not going to regulate free speech.
But it's not free speech is regular. I'm not talking about regulating free speech. I'm talking about regulating privately held companies' algorithms that amplify extreme and provocative information.
Okay.
And so free speech doesn't mean the right to monetize.
No, I completely agree. But I'm just saying it's very difficult to. So yes, you can hold companies liable. That's one thing you can do.
This will be our whiteboard session. One, we hold the companies liable for extreme information.
Yeah, like on TikTok. We can do that. On TikTok, you can't curse. You're not supposed to curse. It's hard to curse. They throw you off. And
you can't do porn. You can't do porn.
Can't do porn. Sure. Yep.
Right.
All those things.
You can't do live murder. You can't do live beheadings.
Yeah. You want to know what else you can do that changes it, that I think is important? You remove the ability to be anonymous.
For sure. I like that. So you regulate the algorithm and you remove anonymity.
You remove the anonymity, because if you have something to say, fine, just let us know who you are. Like
100%.
Because
that's a massive. I think that would be a massive correction in the information market.
I think that changes. I think that changes everything, because
I agree.
Right now, the hiding behind the anonymity of the entire, social media world is.
And people. That's why they have whole social media encampments where the people run 7,000 accounts with one person.
That's why social media is a big business, because of the anonymity piece to it. You can remain anonymous and you can be all these different people on all sides of the market. In the world of finance, you cannot be a customer on both sides of the market. You can't create a marketplace.
In the world of life, you can. If I want to walk down Sunset Boulevard in Los Angeles and walk up to somebody on the street and be like, "You're a dog-eating sex changer," like I have to reveal myself because I'm physically in front of them, like I'm observable.
Yeah, totally. I completely agree. That's a problem.
Yeah.
If you remove the ability to remain invisible and anonymous, you have solved, I would say, 85% of social media's issues. And that's an easy standard to hold people to. I think it's relatively easy, because you just have to verify, who you are. That's whatever it is.
But the other thing, when I was a boy and I worked in journalism, we used to have sources. We used to be required to have sources for our info. You couldn't just say you're a sex-changing dog eater. You needed to have credible sources with firsthand knowledge of the information in order to make a claim.
Yes.
So I think so. I would say that there's the issue of just outright regulation of the algorithm and what it rewards.
Yes.
Anonymity, I think, is a second huge one.
Yes.
But I also think actually requiring vetted sourcing to make a claim.
That's different. Vetted sourcing is something. It's the reason I don't like it is because it's unenforceable. And you also have you have not set that standard. You have politicians all the way up to the presidency that make unvetted and unsourced statements,
false statements,
nonstop. If you can't hold the leader of the free world to true statements, then you can't hold Joe Blow in his mom's basement to the same standard, to a different standard.
Let's talk about that. I mean, how do we end up in a world where false statements from the highest leaders in society?
We've enabled
to the CEO, like you're Tom Sosnoff as a board member or shareholder.
We've enabled that as a society. It's easy because if society is right in the head, then you don't accept that. That's not something that you can accept. It never was in the past, but some reason it is now. Hopefully that changes, and it changes very soon. I think it will. But
can I just comment on that, because it's a bigger issue than just like an issue? Because when you're reverse engineering, monetizing attention, you start with what statement is the most attention grabbing, true or false, and then you're like, oh, you're a dog eating sex changer because that's the one that's getting the most traffic, and then it doesn't matter, and then basically there's an incentive to just say the most provocative thing. And the most provocative thing is almost always false. And so to accept a world where false information is in a pollution in the information markets that's unresolvable, like I can't put a false price up for Google I can't say that Meta stock price is not a real number at which I can buy the stock. It's illegal. It's spoofing, right? Like I have the price that I claim. Like Casey Trade can't make up prices on its brokerage platform and say, Netflix is $1 today.
Then don't vote for people who lie. I mean, there's no other way around it. Then don't vote for people who lie. But the bottom line is that is a much more challenging task than figuring out,
than anonymity, which you feel like is at least approachable.
I think anonymity is approachable. Right. It's almost like saying, hey, you have to be 18 years old to be on this site or whatever it is. I mean, I think there are ways that you can protect social media, and there are ways that you can protect the flow of misinformation, and there are some very basic things that we can do that will not fix all the problems, but that will lead to less radicalization of people that are most prone to be radicalized. And so,
because the absence of anonymity increases the penalty for promoting false or extreme information.
Of course. Yeah. That's the whole problem. That's how people get radicalized.
There's no penalty.
That's right. They basically get catfished into the whole thing. They just don't even know what's happening.
But it's interesting, and just sort of, I know there's not a specific disagreement here, but if you reflect on how strict we are with identity for something like opening a bank account, getting a driver's license, filing a tax return. If you file a false tax return, that's a crime.
Of course.
If you open a bank account with a false identity, or get a credit card with a false identity, or get a mortgage with a false identity, some banking relationship with a false identity, that's a crime. So it just seems like very reasonable to say if you're going to speak in public, you must disclose your identity and verify your identity.
Yeah. I mean,
I don't even understand the logic behind allowing decades of all these false identities. I mean, there was a famous thing in Italy years ago, and I'm sure it's been in other countries as well, where one of the politicians had funded an organization with his political donors called La Bestia, the beast. And it was some group of, 500 kids in southern Italy who were 24 hours a day managing, as thousands of accounts per person, driving attack social media, basically publishing false statements of different kinds in nature about political opponents or driving narrative. I mean, there's all the talk about what Russia does with social media in the United States or China, or what the U.S. does, and the sort of it goes to the level of nation state. I guess my point is even nation states,
of course,
exploit the ability to conceal identity systematically to manipulate and pollute information markets.
Listen, we have the ability to reduce spam. We have the ability to do the same in email. We have the ability to send everything to junk. that has not been
known.
That is not known or verified. That solves 85-90% of all the ills of social media. And it's an easy solution. And I just can't, I'm surprised that it hasn't been proposed, because you're never going to get rid of social. And it's very hard to regulate social unless you remove the anonymous element to it. Once you do that, it's very easy to regulate social, because then you know who you're regulating and who gets in trouble for what. It's so obvious. I just don't understand it. And
well, but let's go into that for a second, can we? Because I think I can answer. I think I can tell you why it hasn't been done.
Why?
Because I believe that the profits of the companies and the buoyancy of the security, the stocks, the performance of Meta stock or whoever, is meaningfully benefits from the economic returns of allowing anonymous accounts to promote extreme content.
Well,
and that if you remove the ability of anonymous accounts' ability to promote extreme content, that the business model of social media changes in a material fashion, such that they are well organized and incentivized to slather on about free speech or whatever.
Sure. I understand, but the alternative, the way it needs to be presented is, the alternative is that you don't get to do it anymore. Then run the risk. If you want to draw a line in the sand, then run the risk of losing that business. Because we have a problem. We're trying to eliminate assassins. We're trying to eliminate people that go into school shootings. We're trying to eliminate people being radicalized just,
terrible psychological suffering
for
things that aren't even true.
Of course.
You talk about just the human pain and emotional suffering for people that are isolated and believe these things that aren't true.
A crazy high suicide rate among teens and young adults, all that
isolation.
Yeah, all that stuff. Now, you basically lay it out. This is your choice. We either make these changes, which, okay, they may have some small impact to your bottom line, or we do something a lot worse, and it really hurts your business, maybe kills your business. And there's no option here. The leverage, you have all the leverage. You have the leverage to do something.
Who are you? Is this the FTC? Where does this decision reside?
I don't know enough.
It must be the FTC or the FCC. I'm trying to. What is it that there's some law?
I don't know.
529 something.
I don't know. It resides somewhere. It's somewhere in the government. Yeah, it's somewhere in government. I don't know exactly where, but it doesn't seem to me to be something that's not doable. It seems to me to be doable. This seems solvable. I don't get it, why it hasn't been done yet.
And, I think, and the answer to the question is, one, there's no incentive for the businesses to do it because it's bad for business. The people with the power to do it, meaning the government, wealthy institutions or groups of individuals, wealthy institutions, and the government all benefit from the ability to pollute information markets with an anonymous content. That's why. And the people that suffer are the most vulnerable, the weakest, the ones that are the most disenfranchised, the most extreme of which become crackpot assassins or school shooters. But I'll tell you, there's a whole ocean of human beings between the crackpot assassins and school shooters and healthy, well-adjusted human beings that are suffering to one degree or another from being constantly, peppered with false anonymous information. And then the false anonymous information, by the way, spirals up to presidential candidates who then go out and say, well, I heard they're eating the dogs. And so then it becomes not anonymous because now they heard Tom or Dylan or whoever, someone say it because Tom or Dylan or whoever are referencing an unknown anonymous source. And then all of a sudden the anonymous information becomes apparently a citation because some known person repeats it, which is probably the bigger issue. Right. The bigger issue is that you have known individuals and institutions, news organizations and individuals who repeat otherwise anonymously presented information, which then takes absurd information and makes it more real. My point is that people with the power to make the change have no incentive to change it.
That's the challenge. That's why it has to be organic. It has to be a grassroots type thing. It has to be something that, we have to be fed up enough. So you started the conversation off by talking about assassinations and assassins. And that's the whole, that we've come full circle.
Well, that's the most extreme expression other than school shootings.
I understand,
sort of
but that's what I'm saying.
At the bottom of the funnel.
But people are pissed off. I mean, I'm pissed off that there's assassinations. I don't want martyrs and people assassinated, anything of that kind of like that. Nobody does. And that's not good for business. That's not good for our country. And so
it's not good for our culture.
It's not good for our culture. It's not the way you solve things. And so my whole point is that that's where we started, and then we come full circle all the way back around. Okay, so there's no incentive, so it's not good. There's an incentive. The incentive is democracy. You know, the incentive is, there is incentive. The incentive is that the integrity of our whole society, and that's where, you know, like social media is great. It's great. There's no turning back. You're never getting rid of social. It's too huge. It's never going away. It's part of the fabric of our society. It's an important part. It from everything from news to information to entertainment to friendship, everything's social now. But there's some loose ends. You just got to clean them up.
Right, but the loose, yes. Okay, fine. Elon Musk could change it.
Elon Musk doesn't care.
Elon Musk could say, you cannot use Twitter without a verified identity, and you must present yourself as yourself in public at all times.
Yeah, but Elon Musk
Mark Zuckerberg could change it.
Sure, but you're asking the wrong people. You're asking the people that are part of the problem to be the solution. That's not how this works. The solution is always somebody else, is a disruptor. The solution is not people. You can't ask Elon to do something that he has zero interest, or he's the opposite.
What about a new social media platform from Tom and Dylan where it's trueself.com.
Sure.
And
sure.
The thing is, here's my issue, because now you're kind of getting into the deep sort of psychology of human nature.
Sure.
I believe every single human being, even the most honorable among us, has a weak part of themselves that at some point in their day or their week or their month or their lives will always benefit from the ability to feel like they can get away with something. Even if the betrayal is of themselves, they're like, I'm going to sneak an Oreo late at night. This would be the most benign and least damaging version of it. But there's a human component of avoidance of self that is a coping mechanism for our own impulses and desires and misdeeds and whatever. I'm going to pretend I didn't do this thing that I just did, even if the only person who suffers from that thing is me, with the midnight Oreo. And that midnight Oreo transitions from sort of that little micro betrayal, a micro anonymity, if you will. You're like, well, I'm just not going to, no one will ever know that I just ate all those Milk Duds, and we're just not going to talk about it. It never happened, right?
That's right.
Up to the La Bestia as the organized 500-person anonymous super, collider of anonymous social media that can, pile 50 million clicks on any idea of true or false. And I just don't know how you get around that, because at the end of the day, everybody loves an opportunity to be anonymous sometimes. That's why it needs to be a regulation. Just like people don't want a speed limiter. There's other things that nobody wants, but people accept. And whereas if you're just like, listen, you can't be anonymous on social media, people would accept that, but they're not going to select for it. Is my point.
Okay, this is a good discussion. I like it.
Like, you're up against a human, right? Because all of us, there's not a single, I'm not me, not you. There's not a single person who doesn't benefit from a moment of anonymity, even if it's against your own self.
That's fine. But again, we're trying to save humanity.
But we're
not arguing that it's okay sometimes to be anonymous. I'm just saying we're trying to save humanity here. We're trying to figure out, sometimes you gotta pay a toll to make everything better.
To live, there's a cost of
that's the tax. It's tax
of existing. Yeah.
Listen, Dylan Radigan and Tom Sosnoff are trying to save social media, right? I mean, I'm sorry that somebody's going to be
humanity. We're trying to fix social media in order to save
fix
humanity.
Social media to save humanity. I think that there are definitely going to be people that are going to be pissed off and not happy with you, and Zuckerberg might have you killed, but that's okay, right?
Or like gin up some crackpot assassin.
Right.
Or this last guy, What I want to know is how this last guy, the Palm Beach golfer guy, how did he even know that? How did he know where Trump was?
I don't know. I don't know.
You see what I'm saying? Like the whole thing is a mess.
He's a crackpot. These are the worst assassins ever. I'm just saying, you know, you're talking about nutcases. These guys are nutcases. They just want their 15 minutes. They don't want to be, they don't, you know, it's just, it's crazy. But they're all like this, you know, like you think these kids that go in and shoot up a school or a grocery store, whatever it is, they instantly regret it. I mean, they know, you know, it's just something snaps. It's just, it's weird. I can't, even people
It's
who
tragic.
it's tragic. Yeah, of course. Even people that were radicalized into, you know, into Al Qaeda and everything else over the year. I mean, all that stuff was just, you know, they knew instantly this is a mistake, but they messed up.